Welcome to another episode of the Heart-Based Homeschoolers podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Miller, a homeschooling mom of four. I'm not an expert, but I am walking this journey right alongside you, and I'm passionate about helping you find the answers to your biggest homeschool questions. On today's episode, we have Sue Patterson of Unschooling Mom to Mom. She is an unschooling expert and mama to three grown unschoolers. In the episode, Sue will help us answer some of the biggest questions about unschooling. By the end of this episode, you'll have a better understanding of what this unschooling thing is all about and whether it's a good fit for you and your family. Stick around. Welcome to the Heart-Based Homeschoolers podcast, where we help you find the answers to your biggest homeschool questions. Hello, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Heart-Based Homeschoolers podcast. I am so glad that you're with us this week. My name is Rebecca Miller. I am your host. Today, I am so excited that we have Sue Patterson here. She's a homeschooling mom with over 25 years of experience. She's also an author and an unschooling coach. She helps families who aren't happy with their educational situations, and she shows them how learning more about unschooling can help. She runs Unschooling Mom to Mom and offers courses, guides, group coaching programs, and private coaching. I know you will love this episode and this discussion with Sue, and I hope that you get all of your biggest questions about unschooling answered.
Okay. Hi.
Yay! Good morning.
How are you?
Well, I guess it's not morning.
Here, not anymore.
No, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
How old are your kids?
My kids are 14, 12, 8, and 3.
Okay. Busy house.
Busy
All
house.
gamuts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my 3-year-old's very busy.
Yeah.
So it's fun. It's fun times. But I'm lucky because the older ones help with the little one now because there's that wide age gap. So I'm so excited to have you. I've been following you for a long time, and we aren't 100% unschoolers because when we started, I was like, I love the philosophy. I love all the ideas, but then you start to doubt yourself and you're going,
oh, absolutely.
Am I doing enough?
Where all the potholes are.
Am I doing enough? And, people from the outside going, your kids don't do anything all day and stuff like that. And I doubt myself, but I know in my heart, like heart-based homeschoolers, I believe in connection over curriculum and child-led delight-driven learning. So it's just, it's hard when you doubt yourself. So.
Yeah, it is. It's all about undoing all of that in our heads.
The programming that it has to be subjects, rather than you learn those while
and we're living. Really, just from society, we're really conditioned to think that you better be productive, and that your worth is all tied into your productivity. And I know that there would be people listening that would say, well, yeah, because it's so prevalent.
So ingrained.
And yet that is not a healthy way to be.
Absolutely. Can you tell me a bit about yourself and how you started on your homeschool journey?
I can. We started back in the 90s, in the mid 90s. And I was just a mainstream suburban mom, and I didn't know anything about homeschooling. And I just knew school wasn't fitting my little kid, and that he did kindergarten and then he did first grade. And by midway through first grade, I'm like, I know I can do better than that. And I don't know what. And then, of course, just like anything, you go to buy a green car and suddenly all you see are green cars. Mm-hmm. But if you go to decide to homeschool, suddenly you bump into people that are doing it. And even in the 90s.
So,
wow. Yeah. And so I picked their brain. And back then it was very curriculum-y. Right. And where we lived, it was very religious homeschoolers. And so I was just picking their brains, and they're like, well, all kinds of people are starting to do this now. And I'm like, I'm probably who you're afraid of, but I'm not saying it because I still need to pick your brain.
That's right. Yeah.
So they gave me all these things, Mary Pride's book and all kinds of things about curriculum. And as we looked through it, and we were about to move, that's what was happening. We were about to move to Alaska from San Antonio. We were in the military. And I'm like, Michael, don't tell your teacher. Of course, the next day he tells, she's like, may I see you for a moment? And I'm like, of course.
Oh.
And so she says, Michael says you're going to homeschool next year. And I'm like, yeah. This tiny little voice, even though she was like 22,
Yep.
But I feel like I was being called into the office.
Yep.
And and she says, I got to tell you, I think it's the best thing I've ever heard. I'm like,
Oh.
oh. And then I thought, wait a minute, you think my kid shouldn't be? And I'm like, what is going on in my head? And so she said, no, my sisters were all homeschooled. And I wish I had been. And I would have loved it. Because let me tell you the story about Michael. We were talking about the planets, and he said, what about the moons around Jupiter? And I said, well, we're not really going to go into that depth. That'll be fourth grade. And he was in first grade. She said, and I watched his little shoulders drop as he was adding up how far away fourth grade was.
Oh.
And now you can just do a solar system all over the whole house. And I'm like, no, we did.
That's amazing.
So that we just kind of jumped in. And so because we're mere mortals when it comes to the marketing, and I lost that idea of, I want a creative, fun approach. I had no idea that you could maybe not do subjects. I thought that was a given. You got to do subjects. You just got to make it prettier, more engaging. And so because of the curriculum catalogs, back then it was catalogs before it was websites. And I chose Calvert because there were so many of choices that just weren't going to fit. I'm like, we're not counting shepherds. We're not going to do these different, and so I'm like, all right, I'll do Calvert, even though the tagline was school in a box and I was trying to get out of the box. But so we took that with us, and it wasn't long. And of course, in the beginning, because I was so nervous about doing it, and I signed up for the teacher oversight too, because heaven knows I couldn't be trusted with this, this second grade curriculum. And so it wasn't long, before I'm like, this is getting in our way. We got plugged into the community. We started getting together with families, doing all these cool field trips to nature centers and to the museum and to different events, and getting together for ice skating. Alaska was new, so we were learning all kinds of stuff. And they're like, but you really need him to write this paragraph about this little red car. And there was a picture of this little convertible. And I'm like, there are none of those here. And he's like, can I write about the moose? Because we just had an earthquake and the moose had come down and looked in the window. And he's like, no, because that's not how the letters connect correctly for your age level. And I'm like, that's it. Because I was a writer, and I thought, no, I'm not going to make my kid hate writing because he has to write about some little red car, where we have to bring everything down to this mediocre level, and so that was the beginning. We had a ceremonial breaking of the pencils.
That's awesome.
We were like, we will not write for that woman in Baltimore. She'll never find us. And so then we just kept playing. And then I ran into somebody that said, have you ever heard of unschooling? I'm like, mm-mm. And so they gave me a book it was Mary Griffith's book, not the Unschooling Handbook, but the one she did before that was the Homeschooling Handbook. And it talked about it. And as I read the unschooling stuff, I'm like, there we go. Yes. There we go. And so, we just started living and doing fun things and talking to people. And I was really one of those people that always gathers people and wants to see, what are you doing and how are you doing it? Not that I want to copy it, but I may take a little of this and a little of that and a little. And some of that was conditioning too. We're so conditioned to not be on our own. We're so conditioned to, you better check in with your peers.
Right. Make sure you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. And so, as time went on, I have 3 kids. And so as time went on, we just moved further and further into unschooling and let more and more of that stuff fall away. And that didn't mean we didn't have waves of panic.
Yeah.
That was something I did end up meeting Mary Griffith because she didn't live very far away from me when we moved to California after Alaska.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, those homeschoolers, the homeschooling moms burn out, but the unschooling moms have middle of the night panic attacks.
I love it. Yeah.
Like, choose your poison. Which one is it going to be?
Oh, that's so good. Now, for anyone listening who has never heard of unschooling before, can you explain a little bit about what it is and what it means to you?
It is a homeschooling method. So when you're trying to figure out from a legal standpoint, how do you unschool? You do whatever the homeschoolers are required to do, because from a legality standpoint, it's going to vary state to state, country to country, and province to province too, right?
Yep.
So once you've gotten past all of that, then you think about, okay, what is it exactly? Why do we unschool? The way we unschool is we set the environment so that the child can flourish, so that the child can do the best they can with what they want. It's an interest-driven, often experiential, backed up by research. Educational research supports a play-driven type of a way to learn is best for children. Mm-hmm. And by being at home, you're able to do that. Right. Instead, schools can't implement their own research because it's one teacher to 30 kids. Mm-hmm. But so unschooling is really when we let some of those schoolish trappings fall away. So we don't separate life into subjects. We start with the interest and move from there. And so the parents become resource finders or tour guides or chauffeurs or all the things, right? Mm-hmm. To help the child have the fullest experience they can have. And so lots of times people think, well, how are they going to learn the basics or the subjects that they'll need later? And the way they're the basics because they show up in life. Right. They don't show up in life, then you didn't really need it. But if they are the basics, like learning to add things and learning how to sort things or learning how to read things, because that's happening in your daily life, that's where you move to. So I always like to think of the difference between a school approach and an unschooling approach is that a school approach tends to want to tell you everything and say, I hope you remember. Right. Someday you might need it. Right. And it's not in context and it's not relevant. So whether you need it. I mean, whether you retain it or not. You don't. You memorize it for the Friday test and then it's gone. Yep. Whereas an unschooling perspective is more of a let's live our life fully engaged together. And you'll come to a place where you want to do something and you don't have the skill or the knowledge to move forward and progress. Mm-hmm. So then that's the thing you need to learn. And then as you do that, then you can move forward. And because the end result is what the kid is really wanting, they're fine with learning it. Right. As opposed to saying, no, we need to write another paragraph and it needs at least 5 sentences. And they're like, But so, they will learn what they need because real life brings it to them. Right. So that's what unschooling really is. It's engaging in real life. And then for the parents, it's the noticing that learning is really happening. Right. And that seeing it and not being clouded by that old thought of what learning is supposed to look like, that it's going to look like school, because it's not going to look like school. Right. But we're not able to peel their head back and see, well, what's the learning that's happening in there? We don't get to know because everybody is hardwired to learn and everybody does it differently. And that's a good thing. That one size fits all of school is not the best approach for most people. So unschooling allows you to be really individualized. It's like individualization to the max. Yeah, I love that about unschooling. I know that you probably get this question a lot, but can unschoolers go to college? Oh, absolutely. And they do all the time. So one of the that's often, it's got a couple of layers. Sometimes
Okay.
people are worried, how are they going to be prepared for it?
Right.
You
If
know?
they've never had to write a test, how will they survive in college where they have to take tests, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay. So lots of the world is full of tests. You can go to
Mm-hmm.
BuzzFeed and do a quiz. Check, check, check. You
Mm-hmm.
learn that A, B, C, you learn that kind of thing. It does not take 12 years to see what a Scantron looks like or whatever it is you have where you are.
Yep.
And so you might need to show them how to do that. Probably not. Probably most of the time they've run into it somewhere. And then from a content standpoint, how do they have what they need? The way it works in the United States, the way it works in New Zealand and Australia, we have community college or TAFE. Do you have community college where you are?
Yep.
Similar? Okay. And so you take the assessment for community college is what most unschoolers do. They take the assessment for it. They've lived this full playful life all the way up until 16, 17, 18. And they take the assessment and they do well on some and not well on others. And based upon their score, they take the class that fits.
Hmm.
It's not a fail and come back till you pass kind of thing, because it is a business. They do want your money.
Right.
So they put you in what I consider remedial or developmental. So like it would be remedial math until you got up to college algebra. Okay. So for instance, my daughter, who did community theater and dance and voice and all of that, and not a lot, and she did do a little bit of fan fiction, but she bombed those tests because even working at Barnes and Noble, where she was like the highest person on selling cards for membership because you could get a discount and she knew percentages and all that kind of stuff. Didn't know. She kind of got a little panicky, I think, during the test. And some of the terminology threw her off. And so she was she was bummed about it. And so we went and we talked to the counselor and she said, you don't have to retest though. We'll put you in where you fit. So in math, you need 3 semesters before you could take college algebra. So those are pass or fail classes. And then you need 2 semesters of writing and 1 semester of reading. And so she did that. In 3 semesters, she was completely caught up.
Wow.
So I always think of it as kind of like that's their transition is the remedial classes of community college. And she said, what was really weird was she's sitting in a classroom full of kids, young adults who had sat in school for 12 years and they weren't any further along than she was.
Oh, good point.
Like, at least I did fun stuff my whole life. And then I have 3 semesters of high school and I'm done. They taught you what you need. You didn't need all the prep that everybody talked about. They let you use calculators. They teach you what you need, and they're a school. They teach to the test. Mm-hmm. They tell you what's going to be on the test. All you have to do is pay attention and remember it. Mm-hmm. And by 17, 18, 19, they're mature enough. There's something to say for maturity.
Yeah.
That when they're older and they can do that and they want to, then there's no resistance. Sometimes when you're telling a 14-year-old to do something and they're like, I just want to play Minecraft, and or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And but at 17, 18, 19, they're thinking, I know I want to do this. And then they do because as unschoolers, they've had their whole life of you want it, you work for it, and you get it, because that's just how life works. If you put in the work, you will end up with probably the result you want, or at least what your next step needs to be. And so taking those tests and getting into college that way is usually the first choice for unschooling kids. And so my son did that, and he only needed to have a remedial class in writing. So he was fine just from everyday math and everyday reading. And he had done a few of the prep tests, like the practice tests that they had, but you can find those. We had this thing back then. I don't know if it still exists. It was called number2pencil.com. Okay. And it was one of those that when you answered a question, it told you if you were right, but it also told you, oh, this is wrong, and here's why I think you chose it. If you multiplied those two first, remember you need to add this and then do that. And so it was super cool on how it taught it as you make the wrong decision, and it shows you how to get to the right one. So I think that might have helped him a little bit with the math when he got in there. And then going on into, he went ahead and transferred from community college to a local university and was magna cum laude and got a degree in journalism and had never written a book report or a research paper or anything on its way up to that. And I think that it was because he hadn't done that. He didn't think I have a problem with writing. He says, the whole class is like tense about writing. Why are they so upset about it? I'm like, because they were forced to do it for a long time before they were even ready or willing or able. And you don't have that.
Hi, friends, it's Rebecca. I know that some of you are intimidated by the idea of starting your own podcast, and most of that comes from the idea of having to do all of the audio editing. Well, there's something that I use, and it has made it so easy. It's called Alitu, and they automate all of the boring technical parts, and they help you record, edit, and publish your podcast so you can focus on creating fantastic content and to grow your show. They take out all the guesswork for you. They do all the hard work of the audio editing process, and they help you publish to your platform. And they have made things super easy for me, and I couldn't recommend them enough. By clicking on the link below in the show notes. And if you click on that link and you do decide that Alitu is for you, you will be helping to support this show because I will get a commission. Thank you so much for supporting the show, helping me to make new episodes, and good luck on your podcasting journey.
And so then my other daughter went to, she did all of her remedial community college and then transferred to a conservatory in New York City where she did film acting and now lives in LA and does all of that.
Oh, wow.
And then my youngest didn't do that. She went to cosmetology school. She went to high school for 1.5 years where she made all A's and B's. And even though she had been the most radically unschooled of all three, but she says they teach you what they want you to know. You just read it, and the answers are right there in the chapter, and the questions are in the back. And what's so hard about that?
Wow. I know that's I've heard this concern before, and I've had it myself that if, we have life changes and what happens if my kids have to get thrown into public school, are they going to be able to handle it? Are they going to be able to do it?
Fine. They will be fine. Partly because they may be lacking in a couple of those academic things. Those are easy to catch up. And then the other part is they're really more people in tune. So there she said, I was in a biology class and the class was acting terrible and they were throwing stuff in the back of the room and the teacher was at her wit's end and it was the end of the day and the teacher's eyes welled up with tears. And Alyssa looks over at her and says, "Are you okay?" And just kind of mouths it to her. And the teacher wrote to me that day and she says, "Never have I had a child extend kindness to me." Not that I'm saying I need more of that, but I just wanted you to know that your kid did that. And that's impressive.
That must have made you feel so awesome.
Yeah. And it makes unschooling works because we get an opportunity to have the priorities where they need to be.
Yeah.
With the people, with the connections, with let's see what needs to happen here. And then move from that as opposed to we must follow authority and all march in lockstep. No. And so and that particular child, now she owns her own business, owns her own home, and actually makes more money than both of my 2 college graduates. So there's that. But she says, you know what's interesting? Because she notices after having been to high school and having unschooled and then left high school, she only went for about a year and a half. And then she left to do cosmetology school full time and said, now as she looks at her peers, she's 27 now. And she said, they're so hesitant. They're so afraid to make mistakes. And I am let's try it and see. Let's, and they have been so conditioned in this fear of failure bit that they are worried. They excessively worry. Let's get some more opinions from some more people. Let's see if we can find what the right answer is before we move forward. And she's like, there's so many right answers. It's, if you don't get it, and this is what I always told them, was that if it's just data for the next decisions, it's not a right or a wrong. It may not have worked the way you thought, but it will help you. The more you push into this, the more you'll see the next time I have this question pop up, I have more data to work with because I've already had that other experience. So it's not like a good or a bad. It's just more data, more life experience, right?
Oh, I love looking at it.
I don't know how I got off on that.
No, that's great. It reminds me of a quote I heard once. I think it was, you're going to fall. Make sure you fall forward. So basically, you just pick up and learn from that and move on,
Right. Yeah. When we can get our ego out of it, right?
Yeah.
When we can just see this as more data. Of course we make mistakes because we're human and we're trying things. And the more things you try, the more mistakes you'll make, but the more successes you'll have too. And the more you'll fine tune where you need to go and what you need to do. And the less likely you'll have some midlife crisis where you're like, man, I've been on a conveyor belt this whole time and I never made decisions for myself. And then how did I get here? Yeah. And so unschooled kids don't really have that very much because they understand about taking their own steps towards where they want to go, what they want to be.
Right.
From a parenting standpoint, it's a little bit harder because you have to give them room to do that. Right. You have to not try to control it.
And not get in the way.
You have to not assume that you know best always. Because sometimes they do know best. And sometimes you are right and they are wrong and they need to learn it. And when you have those experiences and they're kids, you're there as scaffolding to help them, to make them some soup and put a blanket around them and say, I know it, but maybe next time. As opposed to, I told you so. Why'd you try that? I told you not to.
Yeah.
No. This is about unschooling is really a prioritizing that connection that you're going to have with your kids so that you can help them find their way on their path. It's not your path. They're not mini me's like all those little memes are. They're not mini me's. They are their own person. And sometimes when we find that we're in a lot of power struggles, it's because we're trying to make them match up to the story we have in our head,
right?
As opposed to letting them unfold the way they need to,
right?
And being there for them when they do that.
Well, in our family, we've always, from when they were little, a big thing in our family is discussion. We have a lot of discussions, and that's where a lot of our learning happens. A lot of our it's really important to me that they are critical thinkers. I say to them all the time, don't take my word for it. Don't take your dad's word for it. You do your own research. You feel what feels right for you inside, and you make your own decisions.
Right.
I think those things are so important. And I forget where I was going with that, but sometimes when you were talking about sometimes they'll come to me with something, and they will fight for their position. They'll be like, no, I know that I'm right about this, and this is important to me. And then we have that discussion and I'm like, you know what, you're right. And
right. Yeah. And even if they're not right, the sheer idea that they can affect change within their family will help them learn how to affect change in their community.
Absolutely.
And in their own life, and learning how to stand up for themselves. That's huge.
Because sometimes, you still have to put your foot down, say, sorry, like, I understand what you're saying, but
but there's not the money for Disneyland tomorrow.
Exactly.
Right. But one of the things that I've learned about unschooling is that sometimes, and it also perhaps it's because my daughter did acting and theater and stuff. It's kind of like that the way of the improv, where it's yes and we can have Disneyland, not tomorrow, but someday. And here's how we can start moving in that direction. And so lots of times, Disneyland's pretty big, but lots of times we can say yes to something and have some qualifiers, but not have, when I was raised, my mom was loving, but she had a knee jerk of no, because she was maxed out.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's our habit, and that's what we've done. That's what we were raised with. And so that's what, no, we can't do that. Whereas if we could shift that and our new, yes, that would be so good. I'm not sure when, but that'd be so fun. And then kind of what ride would you want to go on? Oh, I hate roller coasters. Oh, that feeling in my stomach. And you just kind of play with the idea with them.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's about not shutting it down. It's about keeping the connection. And then, all right, so it looks like it's going to cost about $10,000 for the whole family to go.
Yep.
Okay.
How are we going to do that?
How are we going to get there?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so whatever it is, whether it's that or a new box of Legos, well, let's see, what could we do?
Absolutely.
And when you are on their team, when you're with them on this, then even when you can't give them exactly what they want, they at least know she's trying, or, she hasn't just shut me down.
Yeah.
And that really goes a long way in personality and character development.
It sure does. When you know that you are listened to and heard as a child, it can make all the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's really like the most important thing in humanity is that we all just want to be heard.
Yeah.
And so it starts with our kids and their childhood. And we have this opportunity to shift a lot of what happened in our childhood and to learn from it. And not that we have to go back and say, you did this all wrong, Mom. But we can just learn and move forward. And, it's that concept of your kids are on your shoulders and on their shoulders, and that we just move forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I understand that you do coaching for unschoolers. You have your awesome website that I've been on several times. You have so much great information and resources. So what do you have happening over there in Sue Patterson world right now?
Well, a lot, especially with COVID, we've had a lot of people not sure what they wanted to do, but they moved in this direction. And a lot of times people think, oh, I have to duplicate school. And so I try to help them see, no, you don't. You really don't. Even if you're going back in, you don't have to duplicate it. And so, sometimes we just talk on the phone. I've had a lot more phone consultations this past year and a half. But I also have a membership group where if you think, okay, I want to do unschooling, I just am not exactly sure how, but I really don't like to feel isolated. And I feel kind of isolated, not just from the pandemic, but from, I don't know any other people in my community. And so this membership group that I have has really blossomed for that, where not only can, there's multiple coaching calls a week from me and with the group, but there's also just group interaction to brainstorm with each other and talk each other off the ledge and and celebrate wins and commiserate when things aren't quite working the way we thought they would work. And then I am like a resource maker. My kids are grown now, they're 32, 30, and 27. And somebody says, I don't know how you make so much content. It's because I don't have little kids running around. I can actually do it. So I make these guides that I took, 25 years in this community. And so I took topics like socialization or a typical day, or how do they learn math, or how do they learn to read from an unschooling perspective. And I made these guides that are just little $15, 20 to 30 pages of information to help. Sometimes it's journaling pages or resources or links or just coaching inspiration. And it helps people do a real deep dive on the particular fear that's bothering you, because it's hard to embrace something so unconventional when you've got fear screaming at you.
Yes.
So if you're afraid of, I don't think they're going to learn math, or I don't know how they're going to make friends, then get that little guide so that you can kind of work that one through. And then you can look at unschooling and see how does it work. I have a course called Jumping into Unschooling, which is just 4 modules, and it helps you get a really good foundation. So that's another, if you're like, I don't really need a group, but I do need to understand this a little better.
Yeah.
And so the course is really great. And I think that's all. And then I have a podcast.
Yes, you do.
A little podcast that comes out just 5 or 10 minutes of a little pep talk from me.
Yeah, I love the little pep talk. Anytime I'm like doubting myself, I can listen to one of your episodes and then I just feel better. I'm
glad. It's like we're just sitting down, having a little coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. So where can folks find you?
They can find me at Unschooling Mom to Mom with the 2 in between, the mom to mom.com or SuePatterson.com.
Okay.
Either way, really easy. Okay. And then Unschooling Mom to Mom on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or where else? Pinterest, all the things.
Okay. I will put all of that in the show notes so people can just click away and find you.
Thanks. It was so fun chatting with you.
Oh, it was so nice. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I really enjoyed our chat.
I'm happy to do it. I just want people to know they have alternatives. They don't have to just do what's familiar. They just have to open up and expand and see that we really are hardwired to learn. We just have to kind of get out of the way and then help a little bit.
That is so awesome.
Thanks for having me, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Sue.
That conversation was so much fun. I'm sure you could tell how much fun we both had. It was so informative. Anytime I listen to Sue, I always feel just more confident because she's so confident and she's done it and her kids are grown and they're successful. And it always just makes me feel like, yeah, okay, the kids are going to be okay, and I hope you got that sense too. Please, if you have more questions for Sue, please send them in. She is willing to come back and answer your questions. So please comment, send me a DM, direct message on Instagram. I would love to hear from you and with all your questions around unschooling. You can find out more about Sue and her offerings, her guides, her courses, and her coaching at Unschooling Mom to Mom with the number 2. I will put all of that in the show notes where all of the places you can find her, and you can ask her questions directly as well. Now, friends, it is your last chance to get in on this contest to win a $25 Starbucks gift card, and I know you don't want to miss out on this. So my deadline for this contest is the end of October. It is quickly approaching. All you have to do is go to Apple Podcasts or iTunes, click on Heart-Based Homeschoolers, leave me a review and a 5-star rating. Let me know you've done that, and bam, you are entered into the contest. But you got to hurry because that contest ends at the end of October. Thank you so much for your support, for being here each week. It really means the world to me. Please reach out. I love connecting with you all. Join my Facebook group, Heart-Based Homeschoolers Community. I would love to see you there. It's full of people that are just like you. It's full of support and lots of good times. So please meet me there and check me out on Instagram at Heart-Based Homeschoolers, and also check me out on heartbasedhomeschoolers.com. I would love you to come check out my new website. And I've also got a section there to help you start your own podcast, because I've had a lot of people ask me, intimidated about the whole idea of it, even though it's something that they're really interested in. So I've got some great tips and resources there. So please check that out. I think That my joyful moment of the week was recording this interview with Sue Patterson. It just uplifted me so much, and we had so much fun. So thank you again, Sue, and thank you all for being here, for listening. I hope you have a wonderful week. I hope you find joy in the little things, and I'll see you again next week. 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 See you again next